Good evening. Air Marshal Davies, Peter, Her Excellency, His Excellency, distinguished guests. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the ASPI National Defense Dinner tonight. And tonight we're going to hear from Chief of Air Force about his plan for the Royal Australian Air Force for the next 10 years. I know everyone in this room will be listening with great interest, as will I. Strategic planning is difficult. Many here tonight have done it. Some of us not so well, many of you very well. And what we recognize when we do strategic planning and lay out the strategies for our organizations, it is difficult. There's tough decisions at every turn. And at the heart of these tough decisions is honesty. That intellectual honesty, whether you be in industry or a military service. You got to be honest about your capabilities versus your competitors or adversaries. You have to be honest about the economic times you're dealing with, budgets, economies around the world. And you also have to be honest about the environment in which you operate, knowing it all. And you also have to think about what are you today versus what do you want to be in the future. And no one is better placed to speak to the RAF's future and his continued transformation of the Royal Australian Air Force than our guest of honor tonight. So please join me in welcoming Air Marshal Leo Davies.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to start by specifically acknowledging Peter and ASPI for the opportunity to speak with you tonight and for the continuing great work that the Institute does in providing a strategic canvas on which some of us can add just a little bit of colour. I have to say, Peter, that your invitation to discuss Air Force's strategic direction for the next decade could not have been timed better, as I expect to release Air Force's new strategic plan in the next few months. So in effect, I'm about to show you a bit of a trailer to the main feature. Ken, thank you for the sponsorship and the engagement of Boeing as we support current operations and try and work out our future. Now, while we're very close to releasing Air Force's strategy 2016 to 2026, I have to admit that we arrived at this point in a roundabout route. The journey started earlier this year when I sat down with my key staff and outlined my requirement for a communications plan. I wanted to inform Air Force members and other key stakeholders of where Air Force was going in the next 10 years and what their role was in getting us there. Those of you who know me will recognise that I've always placed great importance on the people element of capability, and by extension, I have also placed great importance on effective communication. However, having sat down to develop a strategic communications plan, we almost immediately ran into a problem. What was the strategy we wanted to communicate? This was a wake-up moment for us. Despite having a range of classified and unclassified strategic level documents, an unprecedented capability modernisation program, and a strong record of recent operational success, we did not have a single high-level document that outlined where Air Force was heading as an organisation. In other words, we did not have a formally documented and widely accessible Air Force strategy. Certainly Plan Jericho is a good start, but its focus is principally on issues directly related to warfighting, so it cannot fully substitute for a comprehensive Air Force strategy. So to cut a long story short, while we met to develop a comms plan, we realised we first needed to articulate what we wanted to communicate, and we instead started work on developing a formal Air Force strategy. With this background in mind, it is my pleasure to be able to address you tonight on the topic of Air Force's strategic plan for the next decade. As an Air Force, ladies and gentlemen, we have been busy. In combating the very real threat that is Daesh, Air Force is operating its first modern, self-deployed task group as part of Operation Okra. This successful deployment is testament to our current strengths, our force design and our training as an air power element of the ADF contribution to the mission against terrorism. We have provided humanitarian assistance to Nepal and Vanuatu following their devastation by natural disasters in 2015. And we continue to play a vital role in securing our northern borders on Operation Resolute. We showcase our broad and sophisticated abilities through multinational high-end exercises such as Red Flag, and awareness of the need to look for future pathways through our involvement in the US Air Force wargame experiments like Future Game and the evolution of the JSF, the P-8 and One Sky programs, to name a few. Air Force is a vital part of a successful One Defence strategy. Emerging from the first principles review, it has given us a focal point and a broader framework within which we can align Jericho, New Horizon, and the many Raise, Train, Sustain initiatives that are already underway. As I mentioned, a clearly articulated Air Force strategy is essential to focus Air Force organisational effort, internal decision-making, external decision shaping, and engagement and communication. Air Force also needs a framework within which Jericho can sit. Innovation and modernisation are not in themselves a strategy, even if they have given us a heck of a good start. At this point, I would like to acknowledge the many people here tonight who have contributed to Jericho's early success. And to think that in late 2014, some folks said to the former chief, when he spoke here at ASPI, "Jeff, don't mention Jericho at ASPI, it might be a bit premature." Maybe not. While I do not intend to spend much time talking about Jericho specifically, I do want to single out one of the lessons from Jericho that we've incorporated in our Air Force strategy. We have reaffirmed the requirement for Air Force to be a truly integrated joint force in order to maximise our effectiveness. The sum of the services operating together is clearly greater than any of us operating individually. To this end, integration and jointness forms part of our baseline. We do not have a contemporary and comprehensive Air Force strategy document. However, a highly effective strategy has been in play. It has been the evolution of the Air Force ORBAT in a deliberate and structured way, planned against our anticipated needs, and has involved the achievement of technical mastery by all airmen. This strategy has evolved through the succession of previous Chiefs of Air Force, but it was reliant on the Chief of the day to drive the strategy. Society is more connected than ever before. The espoused strategic corporal has never been more effective as a result of the reach and speed of social media. It is within this context that it is clear that a strategy capable of being read and understood at all levels is required to ensure consistency of focus and empowering Air Force to move forward as an integrated, coherent set of objectives in support of the joint mission. Integration is an increasingly critical element of air power and warfighting more broadly. All three services, our Defence Civilian Specialists and our partner groups, are increasingly aware that our individual strength is shallow in dimension and will fall short of delivering the combat power needed to provide government with assurance, the Australian people, and importantly, our coalition partners and regional neighbours with confidence. It is this integration that is the baseline of the Air Force strategy. Our 10-year strategy can be articulated under 5 distinct vectors. These are joint warfighting, people, communications, infrastructure, and international engagement. These vectors have been chosen for their simplicity, and we can tailor appropriate language for clarity. Vectors have both direction and magnitude, and we can measure success against them. These vectors will enable coherent communications in Air Force and empower Air Force's leadership decision-making. Delivering this strategy also recognises that Air Force needs to embrace a new view of leadership. we must recognise that corporals are our most junior leaders, and leadership belongs at every level of Air Force. It is not just me and my team in the headquarters who deliver and lead the delivery of air power. The flight lieutenant has to provide leadership in his or her sphere of influence to make sure we can deliver our fifth generation strategy effectively. So our strategy is also about empowering our airmen to do their job and letting them empower others. The Air Force strategy will help leaders at all levels of our organisation to know what we expect of them. A fully fifth generation Air Force will either not be realised or will take quite some time to deliver without a strategy to guide us. The quote attributed to Sun Tzu is right. Strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory, but tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. Our first vector, joint warfighting, is the future requirement of the ADF. But the reality for Air Force is that we might more accurately think of ourselves as able to do joint if required. We know, as a basic tenet, that fighting jointly only comes from being joint. This requires a fundamental step change in our approach to warfighting, as well as acquisition and sustainment. We are driving for an integrated, not a federated Air Force organisation. This will mean moving beyond the philosophy of joint into an integrated reality where Air Force trains, exercises and deploys as the air power element of every ADF operation. We know we have to support and be supported by whole-of-defence elements, particularly within the domains of space and cyber, data collection and intelligence product. Joint by design means we must invest in gaining the trust of Navy and Army. This trust between Navy, Army, Air Force, Australian Public Service, Joint Operations Command and CASG, as well as our stakeholders outside of defence, will be critical to Air Force's success. Joint warfighting, learning to fight together, plan together and design our force together, will take daily interaction, commitment and resourcing. It will also take acknowledgement that sometimes the priority won't be to do a proficiency or skill upgrade to become an expert pilot or get your first live weapon launch. It will be to support Exercise Hamel or support the readiness of HMAS Canberra. Successful integration does not happen in a few months, but it will be the foundation of the way Air Force does business in every element of its activities. Air Force will institute the expectation of whole-of-government, joint coalition and allied operations from the first point of training, and we will enforce it in our daily business. Our second vector is our people. Air Force is fundamentally about our people. Whether we have the most advanced or the oldest air power system, Air Force's capability edge is generated in large part by the people who operate them. The advanced technological nature of our machines means the preparation of our people is vital to Air Force as a combat effect. Technology has matured to a point that the careful preparation of airmen, including their technical, social and personal proficiencies, will greatly shape their influence on the air domain. We must prepare our airmen for this, and Warrant Officer of the Air Force, Rob Swanwick's recently released Warrant Officer Continuum, is but one part of the military education, training and career planning framework that will underpin our evolution in air power knowledge and employment. We have to train our airmen effectively from the outset and provide them with ongoing career opportunities that develop their skill sets. I'll amplify Thomas Jefferson and Dr. Martin Luther King here and say while all airmen are created equal, diversity is the key to success. All airmen have a significant part to play. This means importing skill sets, training and insight from globally advanced industries such as the technology and aerospace sectors, as well as using our Air Force's contemporary and more intimate system of personnel management to develop that workforce. Air Force must offer its personnel new skill sets from within and outside Air Force, ensuring our training remains relevant and keeps pace with the continued evolution of technology and world's best practice. Women represent 19.2% and Indigenous Australians represent 1.1% of our Air Force. That means we do not have the best Australia has to offer. We still see significant instances of unconscious bias, failure to meet Air Force values, and outright sexist behaviour. New Horizon is our language of pathway to change, and it will remain a core element of our people policy and education. We have established a clear vision to grow female representation to 25% by 2023, as a minimum, not as a goal. Let me be clear. Air Force must change our approach to recruiting, training, retaining, and career managing our people. It is just as important as the hardware they will use. To our third vector, communications. We live in a communication agile age, and there are two parts to the Air Force communications strategy. One part is improving the physical hardware to allow secure and unhindered communication between our decision makers. By that I mean data links, information, cyber, and network security. The other part, and important to me, is improving our internal and external communications to ensure consistent and effective messaging and advice. Communication and data transfer is a key component of air power. Our latest capabilities rely on sharing data to inform the operators and allow more efficient and effective decision making. Mission assurance will only be achieved if we have fast, coherent, and secure information flow and effective command and control. Interoperability has not, to date, been a force design requirement. Our communication strategy must therefore include managing the delta between what we already have and what we are acquiring. VCDF is driving the combat joint by design construct for the ADF, and we need to work actively to manage the seams in our existing capabilities, as well as those that will continue to emerge. The recent airborne gateway demonstration at Puckapunyal is an example of a tactical effect, but we do not have a longer-term strategy that captures how we will evolve it. For example, establishing coherence between communications in the space, cyber and air domains is a desirable end state for any combat force. We have not begun to articulate the structure, the redundancy options in terms of denial or disruption, or the potential security vulnerabilities that drive our next decision points. Redundancy and resilience will have to inform our approach to communications, even as we seek the highest forms of technology to speed up and enhance our warfighting and our air power. Our common operating picture has limitations. It does not have the fidelity to which we aspire, for reasons as disparate as who's trying to use it, different missions we are executing in it, and the different external stakeholders contributing to these missions. Clarifying this common operating picture and increasing its fidelity will require more than just the next technology. It will require an Air Force strategy to drive resource allocation and coherency in our and Joint Operations Command planning. Moving past hardware, the second part of the communications vector relates to our internal and external messaging. The airman on the hangar floor at Edinburgh does not have a reliable mechanism to read and understand, provide feedback or contextualise decisions made by Air Force. Our airmen today are educated and motivated, with an increasing need for engagement and relevance. If my headquarters cannot articulate a clear way ahead, then how can I expect the LACW or the Flight Sergeant or the Air Commodore to use their inherent skills to reinforce the message, to improve the message, and to ultimately improve the outcome? As I've said before, our Air Force leadership is about all levels of the organisation, not just about me and the headquarters. Vector number 4 is infrastructure. The broad basing template of Air Force developed in the 1930s and refreshed in the 60s is in many respects no longer suitable for for the 2020s. Infrastructure is more than just messes, flight lines, and whether they are in the Northern Territory or Victoria. It is about our ability to generate and sustain air power. Bases are intrinsic to air power. Air forces fight from our bases, while Army prepares from theirs and Navy sails with theirs. Bases are Air Force's home, our launch point, and arguably our centre of gravity. They provide the fundamentals of maintenance, ordnance, mission data, and real-time mission-critical information to our warfighters. The Air Force demographic is also changing. Stability, job opportunity for spouses, and social consistency for teenagers are featuring as recruiting and retention factors, driving tenure and job satisfaction. Today, we have over 1,000 members who are classed as married with dependents working unaccompanied. This means they are geographically dislocated from their families for the whole duration of a posting. We need a strategy to manage the complex and changing demographic environment that is modern Australia. We need to understand our workforce better in terms of their needs and their desires, and to match our infrastructure to best suit. It is about who they are, where they can work, and how we can work to ensure they stay part of Air Force's future. I recognise that Air Force needs to partner with ENIG to ensure we get the basing and infrastructure element right for our people, for our platforms, and ultimately for their effective delivery of air power. This means hardening and adjusting Australia's onshore basing, as well as considering carefully the future of Air Force's basing footprint. It means thinking in versatile ways about basing as an operational concept, where agile and mobile basing may become critical to our operations dependent on where we expect to be deployed. In a high-end conflict, the ability to move easily between bases may be a key to our mission success. It means identifying that only through Air Force people is air power delivered. I know I'm sounding a bit like a stuck record, but the point is easily missed. No bases means no air power. No people means no bases. So we'll use the three-point spectrum of people, infrastructure, and air power to triangulate our basing needs, and I'm prepared to be bold about our basing. Our fifth and final vector is international engagement. The White Paper has emphasised the importance of Defence's international engagement in advancing Australia's security interests, and Air Force has a role to play in delivering this outcome. We will embark on a cultural change around how Air Force has typically regarded international engagement. In the past, we have taken a somewhat transactional approach, especially at the tactical level. We have often centred around exercises that directly meet our own training, qualification, and certification requirements. We have focused on particular engagements to improve our intelligence sharing or for exposure to advanced technologies. Given the criticality of air bases to Air Force, engagement has also extended to maintaining access to key overseas airfields. These are all valid reasons for pursuing international engagement, but they are not the only reasons. To misquote a former US president, this means Air Force needs to not only ask what international engagement can do for us, but what we can do for international engagement. In answering that question, Air Force will start by strengthening our relationship with International Policy Division in order to support our implementation of the White Paper. This will include increasing the priority Air Force places on broader defence international engagement, including language training. Further to meeting the White Paper's articulation of international engagement, Air Force will focus on building and encouraging a rules-based global order. Air Force will work closely with our allies, partners, and other like-minded air forces to determine how we can make a practical contribution to ensuring freedom of navigation. Air Force will also continue to pursue international engagement opportunities through individual and collective training and exercises to build transparency and trust with other nations, especially those in our region. This will likely mean an increase in the level of overseas activity. We understand that the world is networked. We, in the air domain, are networked. So we will seek to strengthen our international person-to-person relationships at all levels. We'll also work on developing new relationships with a view to increasing our global reach and our access, and providing mission assurance in the air domain for the ADF and our partners. So Air Force has a strategy. What next? Because we have a strategy, we can now plan our next steps. Here tonight, I've only outlined the vectors, the 5 general directions in which we will travel over the coming decade to achieve our goal of becoming a fully 5th generation Air Force. These are the organisational activities we will emphasise alongside our business as usual of being professional masters in the air domain. In the spirit of communication in which tonight's journey began, I will in coming months release a formal strategy with these vectors, our goals and the pathways that will get us there. And I welcome your feedback in the interim as we finalise this work. This release will be but a first step. It will outline where we are going and what our plans are. We'll also align our internal planning processes and structures with the vectors of our strategy so that Air Force directions are firmly set and can be realised. Air Force's strategic plan over the next 10 years will centre on our modernisation and integration of our people, capabilities and relationships to ensure that Air Force can continue to meaningfully contribute to ADF operations as part of allied and global partnerships. We must realise the full potential of 5th generation. To do so will require Air Force to communicate effectively our aims and articulate our needs to ensure our expected end states are achieved. Because the strategic environment is constantly evolving, we need to ensure that we maintain our organisational constants of technical excellence, readiness and force preparedness to meet any future challenge. And additionally, we need to ensure we have a clear view to the long game of strategy that will see Air Force evolve in the context of the information age. This is an age dominated by technology but ultimately controlled by the people at the centre of all our military systems. Air Force's vectors will set us on a path to success in this age, both to adapt to change coherently but also to prevail against the challenges that will be inherent in Air Force's future as we become the first fully 5th generation Air Force in the world. I look forward to working with you on this journey. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.